It's my pleasure and honor to open this last Lunch and Learn of the academic year. It's a very special edition for us, for me, not just because it's the last one, but it is featuring Alexandra at a moment in time where, well, in the autumn, she will go on to new professional adventures. So this is also a way to benefit one time more from the work that she has been doing. So Alexandra, as you probably know, well, she cares about emotions, that we know, but the other common theme that she cares about is the assessment question. So if it is a formative assessment in terms of feedback, or if it is how to design exams such that students can actually perform best, I mean, all these questions are dear to her heart. And the special edition is also that this work is presented, is about somehow the marriage of the assessment topic and the transversal skills topic that were, you know, a common thread. So it's somehow a very nice blend. So happy to have Helena and Tamara here from the Center for Transversal Skills and Career. And yes, I'm very much looking forward to your presentation, and voilà, enjoy.
I'm the one introducing the speakers. I'm not talking usually, so this is a bit of pressure for me today. Since it's probably one of the last talks I will be giving at EPFL, I had the time to reflect a bit on what I did, why I did it, and why I found it interesting. So I was, you know, be careful to provide the information to make it an informative session, but I also hope that I can make it interesting. So I will walk you through how I usually think about the things that I work on. This is the work we have been doing together with CCTC and CAP, which is a team and a collaboration very dear to me and very close to my heart. This and also the one with SEDE and the one with SEPRO. I have 3 teams with whom I collaborated all the time. Like, I haven't done anything alone, basically. And I want to say this so I don't get carried out by stuff. It has been a tremendous pleasure and honor to work with you. Thank you so much for your collaboration. Besides the professional stuff, it was also the human part that I enjoyed. So this work is about the human aspect of learning. And what I was reflecting upon lately is, there are 2 things. The first one is, what is it that makes students fail or succeed in education? This is the first question. The second one, you see the link with the Lego? How we can engage students intellectually and emotionally in their learning process. I'm not going to talk about emotions. There is something called the 21st century movement, which talks about the importance of non-cognitive skills. And the most interesting part about it is that it refers to learning from 2 points of view. One, that is not something that is just a product, an end product, is also a process, but that entails 2 components at the same time. One is the cognitive or the intellectual part, which can be measured pretty clear, and the other one is the affective part. When I say affect, I mean motivation, emotions, and other concepts I will explain in detail. When you have the time, I recommend that you watch this TED Talk of Ken Robinson, who talks about how schools manage to kill creativity, and maybe we should, you know, start doing something about it and focus differently on how we teach students. So, talking about what affect means in education, and there is a reason for this. I will not be sidetracked. There are different types of affective components. We know attitudes, beliefs, self-efficacy, also types of beliefs, emotions, feeling, motivation, but also affective outcomes. And this is not the regular way to talk about affect usually in educational psychology. We talk about effect when we refer to motivation, how students feel, but we don't talk about the part of the curriculum design and how we measure learning. And I think this is one thing that has to be a bit more explicit in education. When we say effective outcomes, we can say non-cognitive skills, 21st century skills, soft skills. I know, Tamara, you don't like this, but this is how they are referred to, professional skills, and finally, transversal skills. So there are different and a lot of ways to refer to them. Now, if we talk about effective learning objectives, there is, you know who this guy is?
Yeah, for sure.
For sure, Stana. This is not the guy who developed this, though. So in the taxonomy of learning objectives, there are two versions, the old version and the new version. They're anyway old, but what it shows is that from the old version, which focuses a lot on the cognitive aspects of learning, knowledge up to evaluation and synthesis, there is a slight change towards verbs, first of all, and second, to putting on the top of the pyramid creativity. So now, if we talk about effect, not from the motivational perspective, but from curriculum design in education, there is a long history about it. It's in the previous century. We talk about Bloom, knowledge, skills, and attitudes. Skills and attitudes are usually referring to this affective part of the learning outcomes. Then in 1964, the taxonomy of educational objectives starts to include the affective domain. And finally, Tyler, 1973, assessing educational achievement in the affective domain. Tyler is one author I like a lot and I refer to a lot in my other work on emotions, because he talks about one topic that I consider very crucial in education. He talks about bringing back the affective learning environment. Means it's a learning environment when students are not only focusing on intellect and succeeding, but also on being emotionally engaged and enjoying learning, because in the end, this is what contributes to their success. The training of professional skills, if we look historically from the 50s, 60s, 70s, has received some attention, not surprisingly, in medical education. The physicians have developed scanments. I have worked with it, it's very interesting, where they define roles for the medical expert. So a physician should be a good communicator. What does it mean? He should be capable of delivering bad news. I will not get into detail. Surprisingly, why are we not doing this in STEM? Because there is a challenge of developing transversal skills, and that has to do with the fact that there is a lot of attention on the technical skills. And I have to admit that I believe it has to be a lot of attention, because this is the core of the profession. Now, even when let's say, when we start talking about it, we refer to the core technical issues. You see them once in the expression of the term, as the core technical issues and the additional professional skills, as if they would not be part of the core skills. What are they actually? Do we agree on what they are? We know that they have to do with problem solving, with ethical reasoning, with teamwork, with communication, so on and so forth. So the question is how they are defined, assessed, and implemented. And the problem here lies in relation to what? In relation to learning and within an educational context of pedagogy. And the problem, from my point of view, becomes even more complex when we say in relation to learning. How do we conceptualize and assess learning? What is it learning? Within an educational context of pedagogy, meaning, do we talk about an outcome or a process-based assessment? Is this achievement-oriented? Most of the case it is. The students are looking for a grade, and the learning is measured through a quantitative metric. That is the grade, ECTS, GPA, so on and so forth. So, although I'm a quantitative researcher, I have to admit the limits of my profession. It has some limitations. Now, there are pedagogies in PBL, in STEM, like the PBL, and here it's either problem-based learning, project-based learning, or even challenge-based learning, that have at their core what they do, characteristics that in fact would favor the development of transversal skills. They entail authentic learning design, collaborative opportunities while working independently, teamwork, experiential opportunities. However, the problem is that students, when they work in teams, they still make a priority out of what they're going to deliver, not about how they learn during the whole process of the interaction and of learning. So, other challenges within these complex situations are, for instance, the curse of expertise. I will not cite who coined the term. The curse of expertise is, I remember this when I was doing my PhD and my supervisor, so we were in a PBL environment in the Netherlands. They're saying a TA has to be as close as possible to the students because the more they progress in their career, the more abstract they're going to become. So the curse of expertise means teachers on the teaching side of learning transversal skills, of teaching transversal skills, are not aware of the competencies they are supposed to teach. They think it's there. I mean, I did it. They are not capable to make it explicit anymore. The other one is the reflection problem, because it is disconnected from student understanding of engineering learning. They have to perform something. It's also the aspect of taking a step back and reflecting what have we done. So this process of learning again. And finally, probably the thing that cuts the deal in the end are the demands of the cognitive load, of mental effort. They have to deal with so much technical knowledge. And in the end, let's acknowledge their effort and how difficult it is to go through this training, that in the end, the transversal skills are not going to be a priority anymore. So the question I was asking in the beginning, how are transversal skills defined, assessed, and implemented, becomes a different problem. Can they even be taught and assessed in the first place if we start to understand the problem? Now, there is a theoretical perspective which proposes, in the form of an assessment, a way to, if you want, incorporate, or better said, capture these transversal skills and then reflect them back in the curriculum, and that is called portfolio. One of the strongest skills of the portfolio is that it forces students to reflect back on the skills. And there are different typologies that were proposed for this: dossier, a reflective portfolio, a personal development portfolio, or one that is not even mentioned here, the professional development portfolio. All focus on developing a certain skills that is registered somewhere and then looked upon over time. So the difference would be that you register the development of your competencies somewhere instead of having one skill assessed in the end. And this is, in a sense, the power of this type of assessment. For this type of project that I'm going to talk next, because I didn't even get to what I have been doing, we will refer to a training portfolio, which is asking for certain traits of what was done in a project in order to basically show if a certain competencies was developed or not. There is a background and a context for this particular study I'm presenting today. It's in fact part of a bigger project. This is the third study on it, I think. Yes, the main focus of the entire project, which started as a collaboration between these three departments, was to align the curriculum at EPFL. Meaning what? Elena started the job. First thing was to see if indeed transversal competencies are taught at EPFL. I'm very basic. I know you would put it, but I just try to make it as simple as possible for the sake of this presentation. So that was the mapping. It's a famous study here at the EPFL. What are the kind of transversal skills that are identified and taught at the EPFL? That was the first thing. The second one was a question. These transversal skills that are identified at the course level, are they actually taught in the way that are proposed? And even more importantly, are they learned by the students in the way that we think that are proposed, taught, and then taught? So for this project, we focus on the two parts, and more specifically for this presentation today, for the last part on what was learned by the students in terms of transversal skills. The part of the portfolio is discussed in detail in one of our previous works, so I will not get into that. Plus, I could not do it as well as Helena and Tamara. That's the background of the project, and the case study where the context took place is a course, How People Learn, Designing Learning Tools, which offered us the opportunity to answer the last research question. The previous two were addressed in the big project. If there are transversal skills, and we'll propose them later on with a very specific measure, if they develop over the duration of the course, which uses this portfolio assessment, because it's important, they're connected. This is the method overview. Helena and I were very proud at that time. We started our collaboration and we wanted to do something together. So how can we marry the quantitative and the qualitative part in a study that would actually make sense and be useful? So the big project, what is in red is what is presented and what we focus today, had a qualitative part and a quantitative part. Had a teaching part, a teaching perspective, which was qualitative, and a student perspective, which was quantitative in essence, but it also had a qualitative part. There were interviews with the teachers, there were observations. I'm not going to get into detail not to distract you. For the quantitative part that had to do with the assessment, or let's say capturing of these transversal skills, we have run it in the second stage of the project. It was a big adventure to be capable to start this up and going through ethical approvals and legal approvals, not just ethical approvals. I remember the call was I was read the penal law, that I was not doing research correctly. And yes, so the second part of the project entails the measurement of the transversal skills with a self-report. To make sure that this is clear, the context of the course, meaning the students were supposed to apply ideas and research to a specific LEARS problem. They were working on a portfolio on ill-defined problems, obviously preparing them for the professional life. And they were supposed to do this by working in a team. They also received help from a coach, which was one of the teaching staff. In terms of study outcomes and also assessment, it had two parts. One, which was a report, again, sub-specified as a preliminary report, and then an educational artifact, which was accompanying the report, altogether 80%. This was done as a group, and then there is an individual part in which students reflect on the process. So what I like about basically this course, and that's why we chose it, is that it acknowledges that learning, and therefore the assessment of learning, is not just the end product, but also all the process that has to do up to building the end product. The sample and the procedure, these were engineering master students, about 60 of them. They provided informed consent through the HREC approval. I'm very proud of this. The administration of questionnaire took place at the beginning and the end of the course over a duration of 12 weeks. We did data collection through RedCap, another thing I'm very proud of, and we ensured pseudo-anonymity. There were two versions, English and French version, to make sure the students can answer reliably. Now, the measure itself. The measure itself is the instrument we use to assess transversal skills. It's called IPNQ, Interprofessional Project Management Questionnaire. The term interprofessional or interdisciplinary is used interchangeably. I checked that to make sure that I don't make any mistake here. And the takeaway message about this assessment is that it's a self-report, looking at self-efficacy beliefs. So students are self-assessing their confidence in certain domains of transversal skills, which I will say in a second. And more than this, the amount of the competence they have, they possess, and then they have developed, if you measure this at a second time. This type of instrument is used in engineering education, and its goal is twofold. One, for the students, is to reflect on their skills, and for the teacher to give, let's say, an impression on how their course works with respect to the transversal skills part of their course. The questionnaire is developed by Tormi and Caperuza, both in the audience today, online and in the room. It has 24 items developed over 4 dimensions. So these are, in fact, the transversal skills we measured today. They refer to risk analysis, ethical sensitivity, planning, and interprofessional communication. The questionnaire was obviously validated. It has good reliability and validity, both in English and French. And we have used an automated feedback generated report in RedCap to give feedback to students. Yes, just to students, not to teachers, because it was anonymous. The questionnaire has a short introduction explaining to the students what is the questionnaire about. And then it sets a hypothetical case in which they work in a group with other colleagues who are from different domains, and they have to solve project. So they're asked to indicate the level of agreement. So it's a Likert scale on a 5-point, where a higher score means more of the dimension that is assessed. So a 5-point strongly agree on risk analysis mean they have a good awareness of what would mean to analyze the risk involved in developing a project. After they have completed the questionnaire, and the students, in this case, they completed the questionnaire twice, they receive an automatic report where they are told, so this report, this feedback is provided for the students so they are able to reflect, going back to that reflection problem. And this feedback is telling the student that this type of skills are learnable. They are not innate like personality traits. So if you, for instance, score low in the beginning, it means you can still learn if you put all the effort and reflect and on these skills. For instance, for the planning, is providing a description of what planning is, and then they're going to get a score, which is an average of the responses they had on that scale. So here it could be from 1 to 5, let's say a 3.5. And they get this twice so they can see if they had any progress or not. This is done for each of the IPMQ dimensions. And here are the results of the quantitative part, because we also have a qualitative part, which shows a description of the average values, where you can see that at both times, students are above average, meaning they are already appreciating themselves as having a rather above average degree of each of the skills.
Of course, everybody scores above average if you ask them.
At least they have a good impression about themselves.
Right.
If you would ask, for instance, in the term of in the realm of emotions, how do they feel about the course? They might be scared. So it's a good thing in this case that they have a good score. Some are higher than others. So we perform some very complex statistical analysis entitling a fair t-test over a complete data set of 42 respondents. One-sided because we assumed that the students would develop the skills from T1 to T2. And for such a large sample size, I'm just joking, this is a relatively small sample size, we still find significant results. What is interesting though, is the magnitude of the effect of this relation that are moderate for ethical sensitivity. Where am I? Did I write this down? Yes. Moderate for ethical sensitivity, large for risk assessment or analysis, and strongest for project planning and interprofessional communication. Now, there is a quantitative part of this thing, which was done by my dear colleague Helena. I skipped all the details, so I chopped your work to keep it to the point, where the analysis of the, basically, to how I understand what she did, she looked in the portfolio for the traces of these transversal skills using a deductive approach from the main coding of the project in the first main work. These are skills that are already part of the institutional competence of the framework, but what we look at now is the part of the learned curriculum. And these skills were quantified to understand how many times they were basically mentioned. And what we see here is pretty straightforward. We see on the top of the most mentioned skills, project management, team management, meeting management, communication. Why do I cite this? Because they're the same as the one that we measured with the self-assessment. We see some new aspects about self-regulation, emotional regulation, and empathy and encouragement. There is a reason for this. We have piloted a small questionnaire about emotions, about epistemic emotions. So we drew the attention of the students towards the emotional part in an explicit way. And then we see on the bottom of the list, risk analysis, which was, if you remember, pretty strong in the quantitative part. So the conclusion we draw out of this is that there is an alignment in the curriculum between the quantitative and the qualitative parts. So overall, this is consistent. We see the students find most important, and they consider they develop these skills with respect to project planning and interpersonal communication. Risk analysis is a debatable finding, since we have a moderate effect in the quantitative part, but a pretty low ranking in the qualitative part. So this is something that should be worked on. And one part which was a surprise for us, but we liked it, it was a positive one. The new dimension, the literally affective dimensions about emotions, are they're appearing in the sets of competencies, because we believe that it is important to make learning explicit in the sense of drawing the attention of the students. So there are two aspects. One is the reflection on the process of learning. The other one is basically scaffolding their learning by saying, what do you think? How do you feel about this? If you don't ask them, they're not gonna have the time to reflect. So my final reflection is going back to what I was starting with, the affective competency in education, and to create that effective learning environment, which Tyler was talking about half a century ago. And I believe that by working on transversal skills, we are in fact contributing to the development of an effective learning environment. Thank you.